Hello, hello. The name is Regis Kilbin, and the game is Heroes of the Storm. And today we're going to be talking about my top build for Arthas. This is the ultimate Arthas, as I like to call it. This is kind of my default go-to build, unless something crazy happens in the game or I'm facing a strange composition. This is the basic build that I'm always going to choose. Arthas is really kind of a bruiser. He's not a straight up tank. His goal is to get in the middle of a fight and cause chaos and a little bit of crowd control and pump out some accessory damage. So he's not a tank, he's not a damage dealer. He's a little bit of everything. His primary role is just to get in there and wreak havoc above everything else. And this build will help you do exactly that in a variety of different ways. So before I get into each talent in detail, let me just run through the talents really quickly in case you're impatient. Up first is Regeneration Master, then Destruction, then Rune Tap. The heroic is Army of the Dead, then Biting Cold, Frostborn Feeds, and finally Hardened Shield. So now going tier by tier, let's start with level 1 and Regeneration Master. This increases your base health regen by 1.5 for every second for every globe that you collect. So this basically gives Arthas a little bit more sustain in his health. He can survive in lane a little bit longer. He recovers his health a little bit faster, and it actually gives him a little bit of extra healing in team fights just because his natural regen is that much higher. So if you focus on collecting globes, and since Arthas is so good at roaming in the early game and locking down opponents and looking for ganks and bullying in lane, this talent really synergizes with that tendency because you'll be in multiple lanes at a time picking up multiple globes, so you can really start to gather globes quickly. The other talent on this tier that I like is block. If I'm facing off against some really heavy hitters, I might take block, but block only works in the middle of fights. Regen Master works early game in lane to help you sustain a little longer, and it works in fights, and it can scale virtually infinitely depending on the length of the game. So I generally like Regeneration Master better because we just have so many other healing talents. It all kind of syncs up nicely. At level 4, we're going to go with Destruction. This boosts the damage of Frostborn Hungers, Arthas' trait, by 150%. So his attack trait basically works like this. You auto attack, of course, and then you hit D and you get another instant attack. And as you can see at level 20, it hit for 545, which is incredibly significant. That's a huge chunk of damage against even tanks. That starts to shred through their health pool quite quickly. And this more than doubles that attack damage, so it's pretty great. It adds up really quickly, especially with some talents we're going to get later on. And since Arthas is not just about soaking damage, but also about returning that damage, this is a really key talent for him. You need to be able to pump out damage and become a threat. And at level 4, this thing does a ton of work and allows you to lock people down with Howling Blast, go in and burn them with Frostborn Hungers, especially if you have a teammate in lane. So it's good early game, it's even better late game. At level 7, we're going to go with Rune Tap. This is a talent in which basic attacks heal you for 3% of your health every third attack. So we can see that in action here. That was our third attack from previously, but you saw that it healed for 118 health, which is not a ton, granted, at level 20 when you have a health pool of 5,000. But when you're in the middle of a fight and you're swinging and swinging and swinging, and your Frostborn Hungers is going off pretty rapidly, you'll see that it really does start to add up quite a bit. So it really does give you a little bit of extra reach as far as health is concerned. And people aren't always expecting you to just keep healing and healing and healing, so it's great in dueling situations as well. At level 7 in particular, you can use your Q to heal, you'll have a Rune Tap to heal, and it all adds up to a really significant regen. At level 10, we're actually going to get more healing, in fact, from Army of the Dead. This allows you to summon ghouls for 15 seconds, and every time you kill a ghoul, it's going to heal you for a big old chunk of health, so we'll see that in action. Let's take some damage. We'll summon some ghouls, and you can sacrifice ghouls one after another. not if you're full health, but once you've taken some damage, you can sacrifice schools. And not only do these heal you, but they do hit for 40 apiece, and there's quite a few of them, so the damage they put out starts to add up as well. And what is Arthas supposed to do? He's supposed to create chaos, soak damage, and put out damage, and that's what Army of the Dead allows you to do. Summon Syndragos is great. It allows you to do a very specific thing, which is lock down forts and slow opponents. On certain maps, like Haunted Mines, for instance, it's fantastic, and you should probably pick it. But in general, in a default matchup, no context considered, Army of the Dead is going to make you that chaotic bruiser that you're supposed to be. Moving on, level 13, we're going to select Biting Cold. This increases the damage of Frozen Tempest by 50%. This is your E ability that is pretty much always turned on in the late game as Arthas. And you'll see that it does 80 damage per tick pretty rapidly, and it is very significant. When you combo that with the 30% move speed slow that it gives, it's fantastic at chasing down opponents and finishing them off. You can just really start to pump out damage with all your different abilities going off at once. And it's really good in big, chaotic team fights. You're right in the middle of 3 or 4 people. They're not considering all that extra damage you're pumping out in a pretty significant area of effect around you. It's just that incidental area of effect damage that adds up over time and makes a much bigger impact than people realize. So increasing that by 50%, even though it's only 50%, it doesn't sound that amazing. It really is significant in team fights. You won't even notice it happening, but you'll look up and suddenly everyone around you is at 20% health, and Biting Cold certainly contributes to that. So at level 16, we're going to go with Frostborn Feeds. This allows you to use Frostborn Hungers twice in a row instead of once. In fact, that's not even the proper way to say that. When you cast Frostborn Hungers, it hits twice instead of once. So you'll notice our basic attack 218, and then 545, 545. Just like that, we've done 1200 damage in like a second and a half, which is insane. That is crazy burst for a warrior to be doing. So when you get that off on the right target, you lock them down with your W, you come in and you use Frostborn Hungers, and you got your E running, and you even maybe use an aggressive Death Coil on them. You can burn people down. Like, Arthas actually has some burst. He's so good at ganking solo characters or isolating someone in the middle of a team fight and just shredding them apart. This talent really increases your DPS and makes you that threat that people have to pay attention to. And when they start to focus you because you're pumping out so much damage, you've got all these healing abilities and healing traits that help keep you alive through all that, which that's why Arthas is a pretty popular off-tank, probably the most popular off-tank, in fact, outside of maybe Leoric or Johanna. All these things synergize into making you an absolute monster that is impossible to deal with. So finally, one more talent that adds on to that is Hardened Shield at level 20. You can activate this active ability, and it will reduce all the damage you take by 75% for 4 seconds. So when you run into the middle of a team fight, you cast your E, you lock somebody down with W, you start shredding them with Frostborn Hungers, you heal a little bit here and there, you pop your ult so these guys go crazy. All that combined, if they just say, we can't deal with Arthas any longer, he is just a total pain in the butt, we have to kill this guy, and they start trying to burn you down, you pop Hardened Shield, and you just don't take damage. Everything they do is negated by 75%. And 4 seconds is a very significant amount of time. So when you learn to time Hardened Shield based around enemies' burst damage and big abilities, you're just an unkillable wrecking ball that's in the middle of their team having your way with them. And there's nothing that they can do. So all those talents combined make Arthas, frankly, a ton of fun, because it seems like he can do a little bit of everything. He's almost unkillable, and he does damage almost like an assassin. But not just a ton of fun, it makes you incredibly viable, and in the right kind of team setup, gives you a huge advantage over the other team. So in a 2 or 3 tank meta that we seem to have these days, knowing how to play Arthas well is going to increase your win rates in both Quick Match and in Hero League. So if you're looking to climb to rank 1, learning this Arthas build is going to help, because having an off-tank Arthas is very impactful, both in the early game, and he even scales really well in the late game too. So I do wish you luck with the ultimate Arthas build. I'm sure that you'll find that luck, and I hope you have fun playing this thing. Until next time, game on.